The disappearance of Barbara and Patricia Grimes is one of the most mysterious and tragic stories of Chicago. On December 28, 1956, right in the middle of the Christmas holidays, two sisters, 15-year-old Barbara and 12-year-old Patricia, disappeared without a trace. They had simply gone to a movie theater in the suburban area of Burbank to see the new film Love Me Tender with Elvis Presley. That day there was a stir because it was the second day of the film's showing, and for many teenagers it was a real sensation. But they never returned home. More than a month later, on January 22, 1957, their bodies were found on the side of the road in the same suburb of Burbank, just 15 miles from their home. The police concluded that the girls had been murdered, but even with the most thorough investigation, the killer was never found. This case remains unsolved to this day, leaving many questions. More about the family and circumstances. The Grimes family lived very modestly in the working-class area of Brighton Park. The father, Joseph Grimes, was a truck driver, and the mother, Loretta Grimes, worked as a clerk. At the time of the sisters' disappearance, they had been divorced for 5 years. Joseph remarried, but did not help his former family, as he himself was in a difficult situation. With a salary of $90 a week, he could not afford to pay child support for 4 minor children. Loretta's family consisted of 6 children, 4 of whom were still very young, and they lived on their mother's salary and small part-time jobs of the older ones. Even Barbara, who was only 15 years old, helped her mother by working in a local furniture store for very modest money. This shows how difficult it was for them to survive. The difficulty of the situation, poverty, and the desire to help their mother forced the children to look for any opportunity to earn money, which may have made them more vulnerable. Despite their small age difference and their teenage years, Barbara and Patricia Grimes were inseparable. They got along well and always spent time together, and Elvis Presley's music was often heard in their home. The fateful evening of December 28, 1956. That evening, December 28, 1956, the Grimes family gathered around the table for a modest dinner. For dinner, there was a simple dish: mashed potatoes with canned fish. During the meal, the sisters, Barbara and Patricia, excitedly told their mother about the new film with their idol Elvis Presley, Love Me Tender. They vied with each other to persuade her to let them go to the cinema. The mother, Loretta Grimes, doubted for a long time, but still agreed. She knew how much the girls wanted to see this film. Patricia's birthday was coming up on December 31st, just a few days away, and Loretta, despite her financial difficulties, still managed to find a few dollars so that the girls could buy tickets and some candy. It was a very generous gesture, considering their difficult financial situation. Neighbors always described Loretta as a caring and loving mother. Even after a tiring day at work, she found the energy and time for each of her 6 children. She would come up with games for them, help them with their homework, and cook dinner. She did everything she could to make their lives a little more joyful. That evening, she simply wanted to please her daughters, not even suspecting that it would be their last evening at home. At 7:30 p.m., the girls left the house. They were planning to watch the movie Love Me Tender again, because their favorite Elvis Presley was in it. They had already seen it 14 times, but it was about Elvis. The movie theater on Archer Street was 1.5 miles from the girls' house. The sisters walked to the movie theater and even met some friends. Dorothy Weinert came to the movie theater with her younger sister and sat in the theater right behind the Grimes girls. However, Dorothy and her sister went on break. They had to go home. The last time they saw Barbara and Patricia in the popcorn line was around 9:30 p.m. The girls were in a great mood. The sisters decided to stay for the second movie. Double screenings are a common practice. Tickets are cheaper, and you can see 2 parts of the franchise at once. The girls were expected home at 11:45 p.m., but they never returned. Loretta began to worry almost immediately. She decided to send her 2 older children to the nearest bus stop to meet the sisters. Bus after bus arrived at the stop, but none of them had the girls on them. At 2:15 a.m., Loretta called the police. The search for the Grimes sisters would become one of the largest in Chicago history. Initially, it was thought that the girls could have simply run away to Nashville, Tennessee, to attend an Elvis Presley concert. Many girls followed their favorite performers from city to city. They were called groupies. After the story of the 2 girls' disappearance became public knowledge, the police were inundated with reports of sightings of the sisters in Chicago and beyond. 1. A group of people claimed to have seen the girls boarding a bus on Archer Avenue, where the movie theater was located. The bus was heading east in the city, in the direction they needed, but halfway there, the girls suddenly asked to stop the bus and let them out. No one knows why they did this. 2. On December 29th, they were seen by one of the security guards. The girls approached him to ask for directions. It was near Lawrence and Central Park Avenues. 3. The theory that the girls had fled to Nashville was supported by the testimony of a woman who saw the sisters at a bus stop in the city. The girls asked the woman how they could find an employment center. Later, an employee of the employment center confirmed that the girls had come looking for work, and even named them by name. 4. On January 14th, the parents of Patricia Grimes' classmate Sandra Tolstan received a call around midnight. The first time, the person on the other end of the line was silent. The second time, Sandra's mother answered the phone and heard a frightened voice say, "Is that you, Sandra? Is Sandra here?" and went to get her daughter to answer the call. But the person on the other end had already hung up. The voice was believed to belong to Patricia Grimes. 5. 2 teenagers, Ed Lorden and Earl Zastro, contacted detectives and said that they had seen the girls around 11:30 p.m. on the day of their disappearance on 35th Street. The girls were in a great mood, making fun of each other and laughing merrily. This was only 2 blocks from the girls' home. 6. A train conductor named Bernard Norton reported seeing similar girls. They boarded the train near the Great Lakes Naval Training Center. According to Norton, the girls were looking for boys named Terry and Larry. 7. December 30th, 5:40 a.m. The owner of the D&L restaurant on West Madison Street reported seeing the girls. Patricia was so drunk she could not stand. The girls were accompanied by one Edward Bedwell. The location is 5 miles from the Brighton Theater, a movie theater where the girls were attending a double feature. An employee of the Claremont Hotel later inspected the bodies at the morgue and reported that the girls had checked into the hotel that morning. 8. On New Year's Day, January 1st, 1957, the sisters were seen boarding a bus on Damon Avenue. 9. The following week, an employee of the Unity Hotel on 61st Street refused to check in similar girls because of their age. 10. On January 3rd, 3 employees of the Inglewood department store in Kresge reported seeing Patricia and Barbara in the store, listening to music, and they were listening to their favorite Elvis Presley. 11. After Elvis Presley's appeal to the sisters to return home was broadcast on January 19th, Chicago Sun-Times columnist and Landers received an anonymous letter, supposedly written by a girl who claimed to have witnessed the sisters being forced into a car by a young man. The girl even included the part of the car's license plate that she managed to remember, but all further attempts to find the car failed. The author of the letter was never found. It was impossible to confirm or deny the testimony. The case was widely publicized, so someone could have confused the girls with someone else or wanted to take part in a high-profile case. On January 22, 1957, a thaw came and it began to rain. A local construction worker named Leonard Prescott was riding his bicycle along German Church Road when he noticed naked bodies on the side of the road behind a fence. When Prescott arrived home, he told his wife that someone had thrown 2 mannequins on the side of the road. The woman immediately demanded to be driven to the scene. The mannequins turned out to be the naked bodies of teenage girls. Mrs. Prescott immediately lost consciousness from what she saw. Barbara was lying on her left side, her legs bent. Patricia was lying on her back, slightly covering her sister's head. It was immediately clear that the girls' bodies had simply been dumped there. They couldn't have lain on the side of a busy road all this time. An experienced pathologist performed an autopsy and determined the contents of the stomachs of the victims. Based on this, it was concluded that the girls died within 5 hours of being last seen at the movie theater that fateful evening. However, there was another medical examiner named Harry Gloss, the chief investigator of the Cook County Coroner's Office, who disagreed with the autopsy findings, specifically with the time of death. Gloss pointed out a thin layer of ice on the surface of the girls' bodies, which determined the date of death to be around January 7th. Only after January 7th was there precipitation that could have formed this layer. It was obvious that the bodies were brought to the place of discovery. The experts did not argue with this. The experts had to wait several hours until the bodies of the unfortunates thawed and could conduct an autopsy. No fatal wounds were found on the girls' bodies, and there were no traces of alcohol, drugs, or other substances in the body. The bodies were suspiciously clean. The criminals tried to get rid of evidence. Several bruises and contusions were found, as well as rodent bites. Barbara had 3 stab wounds in the chest area, probably from an ice pick. But the wounds were not serious enough to cause her death. Before her death, the girl may have had sexual intercourse, but it was impossible to say that it was violent. The cause of death of the sisters was called secondary shock, from exposure to cold temperatures. The girls simply froze. Suspects: Edward Bedwell. Edward Lee Benny Bedwell was a 21-year-old, uneducated, homeless young man from Tennessee who was kicked out of his home in November 1956. In the weeks leading up to the sisters' disappearance, he had been working as a dishwasher at a restaurant in one of the city's rougher neighborhoods. Bedwell was a tall, handsome young man who even resembled Elvis Presley. According to John and Minnie Duros, the owners of the restaurant where Bedwell worked, he and his friend brought 2 girls to the restaurant on the morning of December 30th. The girls looked very much like the sisters. When the police learned of this on January 24th, Bedwell was immediately arrested for 3 days of questioning. Bedwell initially insisted that John and Minnie Duros, as well as an acquaintance named Renee Eccles, had mistaken the girls for the missing sisters. However, on January 27th, he was formally charged with the girls' murders and signed a 14-page confession. According to this confession, Bedwell and his acquaintance William Cole Williamsham spent a whole week in the company of girls, drinking in various pubs on Skid Row, a bad area. According to the suspect, Barbara and Patricia came to their company voluntarily. The conflict occurred immediately after the young men took their companions to eat hot dogs. The girls allegedly refused to continue the evening and have sex with the suspects. Then the girls were killed, and their naked bodies were thrown into a ditch by the guys. When the mother of the deceased read the testimony, she did not believe a single word. Her girls could not have met such young people. They were well-mannered and did not know about such places as Skid Row. Willingham, Bedwell's accomplice, confirmed that he was in the company of 2 girls and Bedwell himself on the morning of January 30th. According to him, the girls were not the missing sisters. The young man denied any involvement in the disappearance and murder of Barbara and Patricia. Later, Bedwell himself denied his confession. According to him, he confessed under pressure from investigators after 4 days at the station. As he later said, he was asked to confess and be released immediately after. Most likely, the young man was not provided with a lawyer, and he himself was not very educated or smart to understand the consequences of a confession. The autopsy only confirmed the fact that Bedwell's confession has no connection with reality. Neither alcohol in the blood of the murdered, nor especially hot dogs in the stomachs of the girls were found. None of the injuries sustained by the sisters were fatal. It later became known that on December 28 at 1619 Bedwell started his work shift, which lasted until 0:30 on December 30th. That is, during the abduction of the girls, the young man was at work where dozens of people saw him. At the time of the murder, according to the testimony of the young man, he was also at work. On February 6th, the young man was released on bail of $20,000. Where did the tramp get such money? A person who wished to remain anonymous stood up for him. That same year, Bedwell will be tried and sentenced for the rape of a 13-year-old girl in Oak Hill, Florida. He will die in 1972. Max Flagg was one of the main suspects in the Grimes sisters' murder case. However, due to his young age, the boy was only 17 at the time of the events. He was protected by Illinois law and could not be subjected to a lie detector test. However, Chicago Police Chief Captain Ralph Pettick persuaded the boy to take a polygraph test unofficially. Flagg confessed to the murder of the girls during the test, but the police had no legal grounds to detain him, so the young man was released. Flagg would soon also end up in prison for an unrelated murder. Another interesting character on the list of suspects. This time, an adult man, Walter Krantz, who was 53 years old at the time of the events. Krantz worked as a plumber and was a self-proclaimed clairvoyant. One day, the man called the Chicago police and reported that he had a vision that Barbara and Patricia Grimes were dead, and their bodies were in the Lyon area. Krantz refused to give his name to the operator, only saying that the revelation came to him in a dream and hung up. However, the call was traced and the man's identity was established. The park where the sisters' bodies were allegedly located was about a mile from where the murders were found. Krantz answered all the police questions that he was a hereditary clairvoyant. However, he saw the visions after a whole night of drinking alcoholic beverages. In short, Uncle Vajia is not an alcoholic, he is a medium. Krantz was suspected of the murders for quite a long time. His essay was taken for examination and compared with a note that was sent to the mother. The note asked for a ransom shortly before the girls' bodies were discovered. Most likely, someone just wanted money. After her daughters disappeared, Loretta Grimes was unable to work and support her family. There were 6 children in the family, including Barbara and Patricia. The girl's father did not help his children and ex-wife much. The court ordered $35 a week in child support, which was impossible for a man with a salary of $90. Everyone rushed to help Loretta. Neighbors, older children, teachers, and students from the school the girls attended. Everyone tried to help as much as they could. Thanks to public support, the family received amounts from 50 cents to $500. Later, the money was spent not only on paying off part of the mortgage, but also on a decent funeral for the girls. In May 1957, Loretta Grimes received an anonymous phone call. On the other end of the line, the man confessed that he had stripped and killed her girls. Similar episodes had happened before, but the callers were just hooligans. This particular caller was distinguished by the fact that he knew the anatomical features of the structure of the younger Patricia's feet. The fact is that the girl had crossed toes. Although there were many people at the crime scene, police, forensic experts, reporters, and simple onlookers, not everyone could get close enough to the bodies to see the girl's feet. So this anonymous call could lead to a suspect. A year later, Loretta Grimes came forward to say that her daughters were killed by a man known to the family. She backed up her claim by saying that despite the freezing temperatures on the day they disappeared, the girls did not get into a car with a stranger. On the 18th anniversary of the Grimes sisters' abduction, Detective Ernest Spiotto, who had been assigned to the case from the beginning and who continued to work on it for years, issued a statement saying that police had no suspects in the case. To this day, the case remains unsolved. Barbara and Patricia's brother, who was 11 when the girls went missing, said of the case in 2013, "I don't think this case will ever be solved. There's little hope.